Hi, everybody. It's 4:03. I propose that we start at 4:05.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Hmm.
All right. It's 4:05. So let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the July CAG meeting. Sorry, there are people yelling outside my window. Hopefully they stop soon. Um, I have to say I have some feelings of anticipation because right after the May CAG meeting, we got the news about Trump's felony convictions. And then a few hours after the July CAG meeting was the infamous Trump-Biden debate. So we'll see if anything crazy happens tonight. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Desiree.
Great, thank you, Paula. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Great, okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, wonderful. Well, I hope nothing too crazy happens. Um, Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for attending the Community Advisory Group meeting number 47 for the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. My name is Desiree Gazzo. I am presenting on behalf of HNTB Lero, the PMCM Program Management Construction Management firm for the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. I'm joined here tonight with colleagues from DDC, the lead construction agency for the project, and parks and others to help support, again, any questions that may come up. I did want to apologize that we sent out the agenda later than we anticipated. So again, next month next month we'll do the written update, but the month after we'll do better with the agenda. So apologies on that. Today we'll really focus on construction progress, a little bit on access, signage, and safety, community programming and coordination, and then questions. Okay, this is just the agenda, and we'll just jump right into it. So we wanted to share a little information. I know we have been receiving some questions about just preparedness on site, preparedness in general for the kind of end of summer, fall storms, etc., that are typical to our area. So we thought we would bring back some of the emergency preparedness outreach resources that we have as a city. We asked OEM and OEM representative to come and present tonight, but they were unavailable for this CAG meeting. So they did present a number of resources here that we wanted to share with you. and they are happy to come back for the September CAG meeting. Their role would be, again, just to review the resources that are here, but it is ultimately up to you, your building, your community, your organization, to reach out to them to schedule a training or guidance with developing an emergency plan, et cetera. So again, we're just providing the resources here, but it is up to you to kind of reach out to them for that. So if you have any questions, you could certainly forward them to Tara and Paula, and we can get you in touch with a representative. But again, here, and again, this will be on the, it'll be posted to our website. Here are a number of resources that you can look into, again, to know your zone, to find your evacuation area, and then again, to have the city help you develop an emergency plan for your organization or your building. And so we just wanted to share that, and then OEM will come in September. Project area overview. I think we're all very familiar with the limits of our Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. For the overview of contracts for Project Area 1, again, south of the Williamsburg Bridge, we are super focused on rebuilding the park and getting ball fields 1 and 2 open for September 1st. North of Houston Street in ball fields 3, 4, and 5, we are, doing that deep sewer work. There's fill that's starting to come in. So it's kind of at the earlier stages. We're installing the wick drains again, which we'll talk to you about in a little bit. And then, and moving that area forward. And then on East 10th Street, moving forward with the utility work there, building the flood wall down in the south. So there's a lot going on all over the site. It's exciting time. For Project Area 2, the teams are really working on building back Murphy Brothers, and we have some slides for that. And then for Parallel Conveyance, we have just a few slides on the prep work for the Interceptor Gate, and then some of the utility work by Water Street as well. So again, as mentioned, I'm going to use the pointer here, down south of Delancey Street and the Williamsburg Bridge. Again, efforts are focused on the Esplanade reconstruction along the waterfront. Still the ongoing pile install, flood walls, and drainage work. And then they're really working on the park reconstruction with the curbs and the paths and some of the amenities, which we have some photos of the nature exploration area. Coming in soon will be the Corlier's Hook Bridge in the same spot that the Delancey Street Bridge was staged, in that path of lawn area. And then again, ongoing utility and flood wall work down in the southern part by Montgomery Street. And then up in the north, the Houston Street pile install, and then really the Esplanade removal and some of that survey work and preparing it to receive the pre-constructed concrete pier cap. And then again, that East 10th utility work, and then the preparation for the micro tunneling operations that are set to start at East 10th Street. So speaking to the micro tunneling at East 10th Street, here's some photos of the work that's going on there. There is currently a vehicular and pedestrian detour there. It was very helpful. I walked down there the other day, and there were flaggers that were letting folks actually use where we thought we were going to have to close down for pedestrians. So as long as they could keep that lower portion of the road open, they are letting the community pass, which we're very grateful for. So that work is ongoing. And then the micro tunneling is currently on track to begin mid-August, September. The actual micro tunneling work, that area in the park is closed. So they are preparing the trench and the kind of launching pad for the micro tunneling machine. And we'll be very happy to share photos of that once it starts. And then not till next year will they begin the 10th Street Bridge demolition and reconstruction. Over the weekend, we had the closure of the lanes of the FDR to do the Delancey Street pedestrian bridge deck pour. So when we first installed the bridge, it was just kind of the bones of the bridge. And now what they're doing is building all of the fence, the deck, the pavement, etc. Of the bridge now that it's in place. So these are some photos here of the crews working overnight to get that all taken care of. And it's looking really nice, and we're excited when it finally opens in September. These are a few construction photos of the Esplanade paver mock-up along the Esplanade near ball fields 1 and 2, and then the nature exploration area. I believe the pieces here are kind of planting bed areas, and then within the nature exploration area will also be the tree logs in this area as well. So they're really, it's really coming together. In the background, you'll see that they put up the fence for ball fields 1 and 2. And so they're making progress with that as well. Heading north in the ball field 3, 4, and 5, they're working on the wick drain installation. Again, that's to help with the settlement of the soil and kind of wicking the moisture out of the soil. So that way it could help settle it. I can go back and see which CAG presentation we had several slides on that process and how it works if folks are interested. But otherwise, these are some of the photos of what's happening there right now. So just a reminder, as we get into the rebuilding of the park, I know some people have had questions about some design specific, related questions. We do urge you to look at the Public Design Commission presentations that are on the website if you need kind of a refresh of what those elements are. Please, remember that our team wasn't here through the whole design phase. We came on during construction. We certainly work to answer as many questions as possible, but please remember that there are these resources online as well. The preliminary and final Public Design Commission presentations are there if you need them. One of the questions we received at the last CAG meeting, or one of them, were regarding the safety features at the entrances. I think given some of the instances that have occurred, unfortunately, over the past month or so, there was a question to review that. So we did do a little dive into the major park entrances for East River Park. So we have color coded here. That blue are the entrances that are authorized for vehicle and pedestrian access. Orange is the pedestrian only access. And then we have a little asterisk here for the East 10th Street Bridge and the Delancey Street Bridge, which are entrances that are rated for just small park vehicles. But it is primarily, pedestrian only access. So we'll go through here. So I guess just to go back, the Corlear Hook Bridge and the East Houston Street overpass, as well as Montgomery Street, those are authorized for vehicle access, and it is primarily, again, emergency vehicle access. And we'll go over the safety features that are at each entrance to prevent vehicles outside of emergency and parks and construction or utility vehicles from entering the site. So the first rendering here up on top and the bottom is the Delancey Street Bridge, and these are all pulled from the PDC presentation. So again, you can go and look at them. But at Delancey Street and these 10th Street bridges, we have the bollards at the base of the approach. So you can see the bollards there. And then there are vehicular barrier curbs, which are, the curbs on the bridge are, vehicular rated along the bridge, again, to prevent vehicles from going off the bridge on the bridge span. And then at the East 6th Street Bridge, there is no vehicle access to the park due to the ramp structures that are there. At Montgomery Street, there are removable bollards here and a vehicle gate. And then there's a stone barrier here along the FDR Drive ramp. And then up here, you'll see the dark gray line. That's where the flood wall is. So it transitions from gate to bollards to stone barrier and then to the flood wall. And that's down by the Pier 42 park entrance, and Basketball City is over here. Then on Corlier's Hook Bridge, which I believe we reviewed this in the past, but we'll bring it up again. So here we have a vehicular gate and fixed bollards along the path. And then there's deterrent furniture, again, along the edges of the bridge, as well as a non-mountable curb, again, which is similar to the East 10th Street Bridge. And then for East Houston Street, again, we have the walls similar or what is existing right now. Then we have stone barriers along the planting areas here and there, a vehicular gate here, and then fixed bollards as well. So as you can see, there have been measures in place during the design phase, to consider, again, pedestrian safety from multiple levels at the entrances to the park. And again, we could certainly, ask additional questions, but I will say, again, as not being part of the design team, we would likely have to take those questions back, if they're very specific. For what we've heard, we got in the last response to some of the CAD questions that we had today, so we'll be sending those out again, hopefully tomorrow or early next week. So we're excited about that. For ball fields 1 and 2, we were told that we can expect some space available for spectators. I think the last time we were here, that was a question that we received, and we didn't exactly have the answer. So again, details forthcoming, but we were told that there will be a kind of spectator viewing area available at ball fields 1 and 2 for the opening. And I'm going to hand it over to Luke to talk about 1 or 2 of the other questions that we received at the last CAD meeting. So Luke.
Thanks, Desiree, and good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, just the 2 other items. So there was some discussion as to how we would close ball fields 1 and 2. So it'd be very similar to how we do it at all of our other parks that we do close. So until we get lighting, which is the long-term plan, we'll just be closing ball fields 1 and 2 at the base of the bridge, the Delancey Street Bridge, and then reopening it the next day. And the next point, we had some, there were some concerns about how Parks does the league processing, and this was in the works kind of before that came up. So I guess it's a broader concern beyond just East River Park. But on August 8th at 10 a.m., there's going to be a public hearing on a proposed change to the way that we go about permitting. And I think some of the proposals specifically address the issues that were brought up on the last CAG meeting. So there's different forums for people to bring up specific concerns, but you could go in person. There's a way to write the New York City Rules Commission via email, and there's also, you can fax if you want. So I can share that document that has kind of the proposed rules after this, but otherwise that's what we have regarding the league permitting process. Back to you, Desiree.
Thanks, Luke. And we could also add the link in here, because we do have the link that you had sent over. So we could add it in here, so that way it is on the website tomorrow. And we could also try and put it in the chat too, if folks need it right away. But otherwise, it will be on the website tomorrow. And Paula and Tara will have it as well. Construction progress for PA2, again, we're still in the same spot we've been, but we just wanted to share a couple more photos of Murphy Brothers Playground. The first photo is the grading of the soil for the sidewalks, and then we have what's going to be the playground area, and then compacting the ground for the T-ball dugout. So again, we are looking for Murphy Brothers to open hopefully in early fall. And we're very excited about that. It will be the last park for PA2. And it'll be a really great improvement there. For PC construction progress, again, that's parallel conveyance. Most of the work that we have going on for parallel conveyance is up in location 1 in the Jackson Street, Water Street, Corliss Park area. The ongoing utility relocation and test pits, prep for the excavation for that south interceptor gate chamber. We have a photo on the next slide. And then the closure of Water Street from Gouverneur Slip East to Jackson Street, again, is in effect 24/7 for that new 24-inch sewer. On some of our other locations, there are still ongoing utility relocations. And then on Columbia Street, that intermittent bus stop closure is on hold. Just again, some other photos, a hydrant installation on Bruce Drive and Delancey Street North, the Con Ed work on Water Street from just earlier this month. And then the photo on the end is one of the test pits to locate the existing interceptor sewer. So as you could see, the team had to excavate down pretty far to do the test pit for the existing interceptor sewer. It was a lot of work to get there, and usually the test pits are the first thing that we do along the surface, but because the utilities in that location are so far down, they had to do this excavation before they could do that test pit. So just an idea of what that work is going to be like over there. Again, it is, as we mentioned, the structure is about 4 stories tall, so it will be an effort there. And then as a kind of surprise, we just wanted to give you, though we don't cover BMCR in the CAG presentations, we did just want to give you a little update just to make everybody aware that the flip-up gates have arrived. If you were at the CB3 meeting, we did present on this, but for those of you who potentially could not make it, we just wanted to say that, the other part of the GDC Coastal Resiliency Program is the BMCR project that CDC is managing the construction on. And we do have the installation of the flip-up gates. A good portion of them have been installed. This is them in the, again, upward position, and you can see the renderings, how, close they look there. And then this is that was the wet side, the river side. And then this is the dry side. So they're still working on that construction. And for those of you who live, very close to the area, you will see the gates arriving, on the flatbed trucks. And then we have a separate CCL for that project, and there's her numbers posted as well. So if you have any questions with BMCR, please reach out to Marsha, our CCL there. But we did just want to give a quick update, even though it's not exactly part of ESCR. And then just for in your community, again, please, if anybody would like us to come for a tabling event, reach out in our inquiry tool, or you can now email our CCL. Some of the kind of recent and upcoming engagement events are listed here. We are looking to participate in some of the NYCHA family days, but we'll also be doing just general tabling and some tabling with Workforce One as well. So please, again, reach out if you would like us to come and present. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them. I don't think I could see if there's any questions. I don't see everybody on here.
Okay, Michael has a question.
Thanks, Paula. Hi, Desiree. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. I have a couple of questions. The first,
Okay.
thank you for the slides on all of the entrances. I think it's very clear sort of what they all will have. But my question is for the ones that have vehicular gates and movable bollards,
Mhm.
who's in charge of those things? Like who's able to move them, who's not able to move them? I don't even know if you will know the answer to that question.
Yeah, Luke, do you know how it works for other parks? I would imagine there's like a maintenance key or something for the gate that only, parks have, or emergency,
Yeah.
emergency person.
Yeah, so the specifics matter, and that's definitely something that we need to iron out with the local emergency services. But we have a similar setup on the going into the East Midtown Greenway, where basically there's a key style thing that we share with FDNY and the police department, so that we're able to utilize it for if we do need to get in and out for maintenance or regular operational reasons, but also if they need to get there in a hurry, they're able to lower those. But the preferred method would be those gates that have just a traditional lock that we defer to using those.
And Luke, do you also know then what does that mean for the amphitheater when that is back up and operational? Because the original amphitheater, a lot of times when there were events there, including summer stage events, they would drive trucks in there full of stuff. So is that still going to be allowed, or is it only emergency vehicles?
So I think that's a conversation we need to have. I would imagine that, for example, Lessick is going to have some vehicles that are involved. So I don't think that our stance is going to be only emergency vehicles and parks, but we're also, we don't want more vehicles than are necessary. So I think it would be a case by case basis for the amphitheater. So it's not every single event, but if it's appropriate, we'd probably allow it.
And then the next question, Desiree, has to do with the parallel conveyance work. So I noticed that there's been for a long period of time a lot of supplies, equipment, or whatever you want to call it, sort of stored along Jackson Street, the Jackson Street border of Corliers that we always just associated with the parallel conveyance work. At least we assume that's what it was for. And then it sort of seemed to have disappeared overnight. So I'm wondering, is that area being used as sort of a holding area for equipment for parallel conveyance in all of the locations, or is that just Corlier stuff?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. I will check. I'm not sure if it's now that they have moved into Water Street and there is now and now there's room within Water Street to hold that material. Now they have moved it there. I know they have more space in the kind of playground area that they closed in Corliers Park. So if it's okay, I'm going to get back to you on that. We'll
Yeah,
go
that
ahead.
would be great. That would be helpful. I mean,
Specifics of the staging and supplies. Yep.
okay. All right. That's all I got. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great.
All right, excuse me, Diane?
Hi, Desiree.
Hello.
I have two questions. The first one is about the PDC document. So, yes, I've been spending a lot of time looking at it. And what I'm starting to realize is that there are certain places where there's just not enough fine detail to answer some of the questions that the CAG and the community are coming up with. For instance, like around ball fields 1 and 2 in the finished design, you can see that there's some seating, but it's unclear whether or not it's benches or bleachers or what, and there's nothing in the appendices to the document to explain that. So I'm just wondering what you recommend as far as getting some more specificity from them about, what some of those finer details are.
Yeah, I think similarly to how y'all put together a list of questions, usually based on a certain topic, and then we go ahead and work to, sometimes it takes longer and sometimes it doesn't take as long, but we work to address all the questions. I think that would be a similar thing. So I would say, if y'all want to put together a letter on some of the finishing details of the park that might not be in the PDC document, it's helpful to us if you do use the PDC document as a reference source, right? So if you say, as shown on page X, this area here, I would say that you do need to look at both the preliminary and the final, because things that did not change in the preliminary aren't in necessarily the final. So the final has a lot of the revisions that were made, like based on comments and different decisions, and those are in the final. So it really, the preliminary and the final design commission documents work hand in hand. It's not like whatever was in the preliminary is out, and it's only what's in the final. So that's just maybe a clarification that I don't know if everybody is aware of. So they really do work together. So, but please use those documents as a kind of as a resource and as a starting point, and then to base your questions off of, I would say.
Okay, great. So the other question is, shortly after the 4th of July weekend, I think while there was quite a lot of focus on the accident, on the tragedy at Corlears Park, those of us up in the northern section also noticed that there seemed to have been an incident at Houston Street that same weekend, where someone appears to have gone out onto the FDR, maybe through the slip ramp. And so I wanted to know if you guys have comment on that, and if we've got that right. It was a little bit hard to tell what happened. What kind of safety precautions are being taken in that area now?
Yeah, so there was an incident. From what I know, the details still aren't clear to exactly what happened. However, there was an incident, and as a result, there was a review of our area. Extra barricades and barriers have been installed. I believe a gate has also been installed down there that is also manned. I think additional signage was added, and perhaps the crosswalk striping, I think, was reinforced as well. I think it was not as bright perhaps as it needed to be kind of redone. But as far as I know, the details of the incident are still unclear. But we did do a review of the area and added some other barriers, etc., just to make sure that it was very, very clear, that where the pedestrian walkways are, etc.
And is that still a shared responsibility, considering that, the pedestrian crossing from the west side of Houston over, or the west side of at Houston over to the east down the park, and then all of the entrances and exits to the park, is that still a shared responsibility between the contractor and DOT? And is Parks involved in this at all?
CDC, it's, because it is a multi-agency project, I think we work as a team on everything. There are contract drawings that we are set to follow. So it's, from many different, standpoints. There's MPT plans, there's contract drawings, there's reviews with different agencies when we have to close lanes and ramps and sidewalks, and so it is very much so a multi-agency project, and we continue to work with all of our agency partners to make sure that the project is running smoothly, and it is all the aspects of it are approved where needed by those different entities, including emergency personnel, as we've talked about on other meetings, right? When we close down different ramps and access points and etc., we have to make sure that police and fire groups can come, and they will come to the site, and they'll do radius turning tests and make sure that they have access to everything. So it is very much so a multi-party involvement for most all parts of the project.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and my final comment is, when OEM comes to the September meeting, I think it's helpful to have all of the information about how individual organizations, residents, buildings, whatever, can learn about emergency preparedness. I think, my questions at least have been specifically focused on preparations to keep the construction safe and to keep all of that construction equipment basically off the FDR if Sandy happens again. So if they can also speak to that, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, that would be, so we have your response prepared. So you should be getting it, I think, tomorrow, but there are preparation plans that the contractors have as part of their initial kind of safety plans that they have to present before the construction starts. So I don't know if you remember, but in the very first CAG meetings, we kind of outlined a set of documents that the contractor has to provide. It's like health and safety plans and all sorts of different documents and where to go what happens if a worker gets hurt, so there's all sorts of things that the contractor needs to have plans for, and storm preparation is one of them. So that is, part of that whole submittal that needs to be reviewed again by the agencies, etc., before the contractor can even start work on the project. So we spoke to our safety person as well, and that is all covered in kind of the contractor's plans. They also receive OMB, I believe it was. I don't have your answer right in front of me, and I should, but I'll be sending it over to you. But the different city agencies, they send out different alerts in advance of storms, to say like if there's a high wind advisory and the contractor needs to, stop work on the cranes or secure the cranes, so there's all different types of notifications that are specifically for the entities that are working within the city that prepare them, for different things. So they get all those alerts as well, in addition to having the plans that they have in place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Robin, it's your turn.
Thanks. Hi, Desiree. Could you go back to that slide, the safety slide that showed the walls at Houston Street?
Sure. Yeah.
I too, I too, and I think this, what Diane brought this up, I too, was very concerned about this in the planning stages when we, from parks, it just, in what's happening at those crosswalks, when you enter the park, you're right into the park. So what's going to be there? Are there going to be any of those bollards there to prevent vehicles from going in?
So it looks like the way the design is right now is that the bollards are, set in from that initial little kind of holding area here, that there are the FDR drive access walls here and here that kind of create this pinch point here at the crosswalk. And then the barriers really take place just instead of the FDR drive access ramp.
Right. I just find that very concerning that there's that open pinch point, as you call it. And that's something that I pointed out when I was on the Parks Committee also. So I don't know if anything else can be done for that, but that's concerning to me that cars are just going to be flying up the ramp and right into the park. So all that front area seems to me to be a hazardous setup. I want to also bring up, you had, thanks for reminding me or reminding us that we could go look at designs and that you're just here for construction. I get that. But again, who would we talk to then, if not you, about the shade issues and things like seating and ball fields? Because, I just was in the new area, which is not part of this, right? That new Southern Park, which is north of Montgomery, south of the East River Park, that was with the ball fields and the soccer field. Sorry?
Pier 42?
Yes, and it's basically, the playgrounds are useless with no shade. And so, we keep talking about that, but I don't know who else we are supposed to talk to see if that's going to be implemented in other playgrounds and other areas of the park. And also, Parks is on here. It'd be great if there was signage in those places to let people know that there's this permit meeting happening, because there were people just sort of sitting and waiting to play tennis, and they just sit and wait. So Those are my
Yeah,
comments. Thank
Robin,
you.
just in regards to, sorry, Luke, and then sorry, I thought you go off mute. I think you can submit any questions about the ESCR project to us, and we will, get you the answers or submit your comments and move them forward. So again, I think if it is a little bit better, like if lots of folks have questions about some of the design elements, or if it's more so on safety elements, then maybe kind of one letter is put together on safety elements, one letter is put together on maybe some like design amenities, just so that way we could keep them, if they could be organized, I think it will help getting them answered by the kind of people who focus on different things. So maybe one is focused on any questions on amenities, like you said, seating, shade, etc. And then, if there are questions about some of the safety concerns of the design as it is now, then I would suggest, putting that in a different memo. But we are here to take all questions. I just can't speak to some of the design decisions that were made without, having some background on it. And Luke, I'll let you go ahead, take over. I think you had your mic off.
Yeah. No, just two different pieces there. So regarding the shade structure, I remember you brought it up last CAG meeting, specific at the ball fields. So we did look into a little bit. Right now in Manhattan, there's no formalized shade over any of the dugout areas surrounding the ball fields. We're still looking at what could work, because I think it is a valid concern. So right now our thoughts are something that's like a league could come in and put up something that's a little more formalized, and we put like an attachment point. But there's some concerns about putting a hard structure over there where it would create kind of a area that might be habitated. So we're still looking at it, but we're not ignoring what you said, because I think it is valid. And we're also looking at shade in Pier 42, but there's some structural things that it's not as easy as we initially thought to just put up a shade structure going from the lamppost, for example. So we are looking at that. We just want to make sure we're not creating like an unsafe condition. And then just for the permitting, so I think that's a very good point that we probably should, publicly post in the areas that are permitted, that they're going to have this big meeting. If there was a specific concern, I think you mentioned that people were waiting around to get a permit accepted. I'm not familiar with that. So if you let me know, I can look into it.
So they were just basically showing up to play tennis without permits and waiting for the court to empty. That's what they were telling me. So that's just that one particular area.
Luke, does Pier 42 tennis courts have permits yet, or is it just free play?
I know they're permitting in Pier 42 in the area that was open, from last year. I can't speak if it's specific to the tennis courts versus the other areas, but I believe it's all permitted right now.
Yeah, it was
is,
tennis, and it would just be helpful to put signage up and let people know this meeting's happening. That
I think that's a great point. So I'll work on making sure that it's kind of everyone is aware that we want community feedback similar to this meeting, but for the rules that, determine how you can permit things. So I think that's a very good point.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Well, I don't see any.
Oh, I think maybe Christine just raised her hand. I just saw something pop
Oh,
up.
yes. Go ahead, Christine.
Thanks. Yeah, since we are still on this intersection there on Houston Street, yeah, it was just really it's heartbreaking whenever somebody well, basically gets killed because they couldn't figure out how to find their way in the park or how to leave it safely. But I also still have real concerns about I also have more concerns about it because I enter this park almost every day on Houston Street. And what I have observed is that people that are coming from the south up the ramp, instead of making the left-hand turn that they're supposed to make, they're going straight. The other day, a bus did that. And there was a woman with a small child on the other side. And if she had the walking sign, if she hadn't looked, something bad would have happened. And I think we need to get a conversation going with the Department of Transportation. It's unsafe now. And once the park is open, it's not going to improve any because it'll only be more people that are exposed to the various hazards of that intersection. That's my suggestion. And then the other question I have, this was more a comment or maybe a request, is that when Desiree said that, I don't know whether I want to quote you, but you talked about the 10th Street pedestrian bridge is not going to be demolished until 2025. That leads me to believe that you have like sort of maybe a schedule of what you're going to do in 2025 in terms of park closure. And I'm just wondering, when are you planning to share that with the CAG so we actually have time to give input?
As soon as I have that information, I would happily present it. I will go back and ask for an update. Again, I think, some of the larger items do have, tentative schedules to them. So I think we're working through still the amenity closure and openings. And I would say I would hope, sometime in the next couple of months, we'll be able to provide an update on that. Right now, the most we know is that fields 1 and 2 are going to open in the beginning of September. And I will again bring that back to see when we can get an update on further amenities.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, because time runs. So
Yeah.
if you do it in 2 months, that'd be October, and that's two months away from 2025.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess, Christine, just in terms of like providing feedback, is there specific things you had in mind, or just in general, given, just a reaction from the whatever that proposed schedule is?
Yeah, it's just, I think we went through the same exercise last time when some sections of around Houston Street were closed and we had comments. I think, that's why we're meeting, and that's why we're sitting around here, is to give you a perspective from the community and park users side, so to inform your decisions. And I think it's supposed to be a dialogue, and dialogues take time.
Yes, 100%. I just wanted to see if you had any specific questions or concerns now, before any updates that I go back to get to you. Because if so, we would love, to take them. But otherwise, yes, I will go back and request an update on.
Yeah, not.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, not at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. And then regarding anything with, city DOT, again, I think it would be similarly to other ways that we coordinate with our agencies. I think, if you write a memo or a letter, then we can pass that forward and look for coordination with that agency. Luke, you have your hand raised.
Just on the DOT front, I think it'd be helpful to capture what everybody said in terms of DOT street crossing concerns. I'm planning on reaching them out regarding the Pier 42 access point. I think that could use a little bit of work because it's kind of a new use case over there and it's not an ideal crossing. So it could use some street markings from my perspective. So I'd be happy to also take the notes from the community and kind of bundle it in with the Pier 42 concerns to see if there's some things that we can do to improve safety.
Didn't we already send one letter on behalf of the CAG when that Houston Street crossing was first changed? Paula?
I cannot remember. I would have to go back and check.
Yeah, we should go back and check.
Yeah, and I know we have, just regarding the Houston Street area, as well as the Montgomery Street kind of Pier 42 area. Down there we've had a walkthrough with City DOT. Up in Project Area 1, we've had some walkthroughs with City DOT, and then a Houston Street as well. Like as I mentioned, it is a multi-agency review of all these spaces. So I think there were comments in the past, and we did go back. But certainly, again, as Luke mentioned, please definitely, send your concerns, and then we'll revisit it again.
Are there other questions? All right, well, I don't see any. So thank you, Desiree and Luke.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, CAG members, as we do, let's take a 2-minute break and reconvene at about 4:57. All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the CAG only portion of the meeting. Does anyone want to start us off with a question or a concern? Or a follow-up?
Well, I will. When we met last time, we had agreed that we were going to put together a list of, like, I think, yeah, change requests type things from the CAG. Robin mentioned this earlier when she was talking about shade structures and, the placement of the trees and things like that. So I had volunteered to help out with that. And I think that what I ran into when I looked at that was that the design document that I had, the PDC design document, was just didn't have enough details in it, right? That's what I was asking Desiree about before. I've never tried comparing the preliminary document with the final document. I guess I'll give that a shot and see if it helps. But here's some things that I made notes about. Like, we wanted to have a clear sense of where all the trees were, but you kind of have to piece that together by looking at individual slides. Ball field seating, I can't tell from the PDC document, or at least the final version of it, what kind of seating is nearby the ball fields. Obviously, we know there are no shade structures, but we would need to figure out where they might be placed. And then a concern that has been growing since the last time we met is, where are the water sources in this park? If you've been to the open section of East River Park lately, or really any of our parks, they're quite dry. We're going to have all these new plantings, trees, shrubs, all this stuff. And I could not personally find a map of where the water sources are, so that the park can be taken care of. So I'm going to suggest that instead of, as much as we can, I think I can draft something that would, for everybody to look at, that would reference the PDC document. But I think that a lot of what we're concerned about isn't actually visible in the PDC document, and we kind of need to push them on that. So I just want to give an update on that, since I had volunteered to work on it.
Got it. Thank you, Diane. Anyone have questions for Diane?
Not a question, just saying thank you, because I'm sure it is quite the job to go
Yeah.
through these slides.
Yes, I thank you too. Doesn't sound like the most pleasant task.
It's it would be fine if there was enough detail in certain places, but I think there are a number of things that are glossed over. And it would be great if I've mentioned things that occurred to me or that came up in our last conversation. If people think of other things they're concerned about, it would be great to get a list of those so that we could check the PDC documents and see if they address those concerns at all.
Hi, Robin. Thank you, Diane, for that. What would next, besides what you just mentioned, what would next steps be? And do you need help with this document? Because I can help you now.
Yeah, I mean, I have some notes, which is what I was reading from when I started talking. I will put them in a Google Doc and share it with Paula and Tara, and then they can share it with anybody else who's interested in fleshing it out.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else? Well, sorry, Tara and I, about the September meeting, we have an update. Our organization, Pratt Center for Community Development, is having an event the night of Thursday, September 26th, which is naturally when our meeting would be, even though it hasn't been officially scheduled. So we would like to propose doing it the week before, on September 19th. And we talked with Desiree about that, and she's okay with that. So I hope that's not too disruptive or an inconvenience. But we are just not available on the 26th.
Well, it seems like the sooner we get back together in September, the better.
Yeah, I had that same thought.
Who knows what they'll be doing for 2 months?
Yeah. Um. All right, anything else?
It's Robin. I just wanted to mention that I, for whatever reason, only just took a bike ride up to Stuyvesant Cove, and I was quite surprised at how it's been designed. And I know we've had these discussions where basically all the green stuff is up on a hill behind a wrought iron fence, and all the open space is just concrete and tables. So I know that it's Richard, are you from that? You're up there, right? Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I was really quite surprised, and I'm fearful about what the rest of the park's gonna look like.
I haven't been up there in ages. That's a little bit north of where I live. But I did
Okay.
is that the bike path is on, I mean, there's a wall between the bike path and the river, right?
There is, but this little construction, but I just wanted to ride through and see this new the open, park. I hadn't seen it. And it's just very wide open concrete with
Uh.
some concrete tables for anyone who's interested. And anything green, they used to be able to sit amongst the green, and now you really can't. It's sort of up on a hill, with another pathway. Maybe you can sit on that pathway, but I was quite surprised. And of course, what is missing? There's no shade whatsoever. So anyway, just for those of you who are in that area, and I was quite surprised.
Robin, we're not excited about the fact that they completely ignored all of our requests for shade structures and a number of other, there are many, many, many issues with the redesign of Stuyvesant Cove, and we're figuring out ways to mitigate it. The first thing is, we have received funding from the council member's office to put up shade structures, so that's already in process. We're already thinking about how to, cleverly deal with the fact that, for some reason that I will never understand, they decided that we needed more pavement in a moment when clearly like open space design is going towards more permeable surface as part of resiliency efforts. Why they did it that way, I don't know. It's extremely frustrating because also some of the places where the benches are by the water are exactly in the places where there are splash zones, and you can already see a bunch of what we thought was originally salt, but is actually probably more likely white rust because those railings are not made out of marine grade stainless steel. But people get splashed when they sit there. We've asked them to move those benches, and so far they have not complied. The fact is, we have a whole punch list of items where we're like, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this? How are we supposed to deal with this? And they haven't addressed any of them. EDC just asked them for another call and another walkthrough. But we're starting to feel like they're probably not going to fix the problems that they've caused, and it's going to be up to us to figure out how to contend with that. And what that's probably going to mean is raised beds on wheels. One of those elevated paths is actually not ADA compliant, and they are supposed to address that, but may not. So we may just end up breaking up the concrete and taking that path out since it doesn't lead to anywhere anyway. There are many things. This project, from our point of view, has been a little bit of a disaster. And honestly, if I knew that it was going to be like this and that they were going to be so unresponsive and so tone deaf about what's actually needed in this space, I would have said, or I would have advocated much more strongly for them just building flip down walls under the highway and taking our chances with the park. in the event of a storm. People wanted the park to have a chance to survive a storm, and that's why we chose the option that we chose. But yeah, it's been extremely disappointing. And I didn't bring this stuff up with Desiree because honestly, Desiree has no power to do anything about these things, and that's been pretty much a waste of time up until this point. So yeah, it's disappointing and frustrating, and I think, you know, all the more reason to try to get some real specificity about some of the things that Diane mentioned, because they are not going to do what might seem like the common sense thing to do.
Thank you, Dina. Yeah, I was quite surprised. I know we've been in these meetings, you've talked about your issues. This reminds me if this maybe it's something that we need as a CAG to, you know, get more on-site meetings before things get open. So we can do any, you know, make some more suggestions as we see things. I don't know when the ball field's opening in September. I know we have a meeting in September, but maybe we can try to get it another walkthrough before it's open to the public, you know, any ways that we can continue to see the park as it's being constructed would be very helpful.
I can also share that, you know, anytime we've said, this is not a good idea, or you really should consider changing this element or whatever, then the automatic and constant response is, well, we aren't design, we're just construction, so we have to do whatever is on the plan. Now, of course, they don't always do what's on the plans when it's inconvenient for the contractor. Plans go out the window. When we've tried to get in touch with the design team at DDC, when EDC has tried to get in touch with the design team at EDC, they do not respond. So, you know, that's part of the problem too, is that you can identify stuff, but they won't actually address changing the plan. Anyway, I'm sorry, Christina, you should.
Christine?
Yeah, and maybe that's just totally naive what I'm saying now, but I guess I'm wondering, did EDC accept the park as finished?
No, but they're acting as though we have anyway. No, from our point of view and EDC's point of view, it is not substantially completed. They have not done any of the things that we've asked them to do to complete. But the contractors already told Candace that, you know, their team is leaving, they're moving on. It's not their problem anymore. So they don't honor their agreements. They don't follow their plans unless it's highly inconvenient for us and for the public. And they have been honestly like some of the worst partners that I've ever had to work with in 17 years of working in solar.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what we as the CAG could do, because I think that just sounds totally unacceptable.
Yeah, I would agree, but I mean, I think anything that can be done, but they just seem completely unresponsive to any pressure from anybody, as far as I can tell.
A council member has stepped in, or where does he stand there? And for president?
Yes, I mean, everyone says it's unacceptable. And everyone seems to be acting as though it's unacceptable, but there's nothing that we can do to hold them accountable, which is why, you know, part of the reason that Keith gave us this $50,000 for shade structures is because people have been calling his office constantly saying, why is there no shade? Why is there no shade? But instead of going to DDC and saying, you know, hey, you guys are spending $350 million on this project, why is there no shade? Instead, it's another capital expenditure, you know, for us to deal with. I don't know. I really don't know. No one seems to be like, they seem to be totally like a law unto themselves that nobody seems to be able to manage.
Isn't that what we're supposed to be though, the CAG? Isn't that what we're supposed to be? here for?
Well, I think that's part of the reason we're talking about putting together this letter or set of letters to point out deficiencies in the design, get it in writing and go to them. But what I'm hearing Dina say is that that's a start, but it's not necessarily going to be enough.
I mean, it's possible that ultimately, like, it's gonna take, throwing a really big fit, going to the media, going to the mayor's office. I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna take. But I feel so far, the pressure that we've tried to apply to them has not been effective. And of course, we're the smallest entity, involved in this process. So naturally, they don't feel like they need to respond to us maybe. So in terms of East River Park, there may be there may be some more leverage, I don't know. But the fact that, they seem to be just as unresponsive to EDC as they are to us, it's not a good sign. And I'm definitely not saying like we should give up. I don't think anybody should give up. I'm just trying to be transparent about what we've actually experienced over the last 4 years.
Thanks, Dina. Diane, I can't wait to see your letter.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, the same thing. Thank you for sharing, Dina. And thank you, Diane, in advance, sir, for the work you've already done to prepare the list, and I'll share it with the CAG when you send it to me.
Okay.
But if no one else has any, I don't see any other hands raised, so you can have your 45 minutes back, and let's hope for an uneventful evening.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Talk to you
Paula.
Thank you,
later.
Paula. Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
September.
Bye.